Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, bona, привет, mabuhay, and jean dobre. It's really, really good to be with you again. And I know you'll be so happy you've joined us because we have a very cool special guest with us, and that is Femke Mortimore. And I'm so happy to have you with us, Samka. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm super excited. Yeah, super excited to
Oh,
be here.
me too, me too. And Samka, will you please tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a transformational coach trainer. I help individuals find freedom from within, and I also train coaches on how to help others find their freedom within.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And one of the things that I really loved about you when I first started to get to know you through like just getting exposed to some of your posts on social media and so forth is, you know, you have such an interesting combination of things that you bring into the work that you do. Talk about being a coach, of course, but you're also in neuroscience and quantum physics.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Tell me a little bit more of what, like, especially the mix between the coaching and the neuroscience and the quantum physics. I don't think I've heard very many people or anyone connect all of those.
Yeah, gosh. Um, so I think first of all that it's so important to connect all of those because what I see in the coaching industry, but also in the law of attraction industry, something that really bothered me from early on. I've been in the coaching industry for 25 years now. I started in my early 20s after a very early midlife crisis, so to speak. Um, and I just felt like it was really superficial. And
Mm,
I really deeply felt I wanted to help people. And so I wanted to make sure that if I'm going to work with someone and I have their life in my hands, that I take a very thorough approach.
mm,
And I think that kind of curiosity and passion for what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, like I just from like early on really dove into that. And initially it was really with some of my clients say that I have a little bit of an engineer's mind because I like to figure things out. I have a background in accounting and finance, loved math. So that I have that kind of a brain. But then later on, because I found that there was like kind of like a limit to what I was able to achieve. So the focus was so much on strategies and on the
mm.
cognitive. And I really had to learn for myself to fully embody my own freedom and my own intuitive guidance. And as I started doing that, I also started incorporating that with everything that I already knew.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of what you're saying resonates with me. Um, I have also now been in the coaching space. Oh my gosh, I for some reason, like the mental math is not uh, being my friend right now, but like from like early 2012 or so, maybe even like towards the end of 2011 is when I first started getting coached. Like my my happiness coach, my happiness mentor, and I started coaching with her as her student, actually. And uh, maybe I just got really spoiled because the very first coach a mentor that I had in the coaching industry was so amazing and so awesome.
Yeah.
Like, like you, she also uh sort of came at coaching from this more like holistic perspective where she brought in like she was a happiness coach, happiness expert. And she took a really broad view of what it really meant for us to be happy and what it took for us to be happy. And so there were like so many different things that she touched on and incorporated and taught us about in that context, including, spirituality, including science, including just a basic coaching that you find other people engaging in. And I had such an amazing experience with her. It was so transformative for me that I was like, oh, I gotta share this and help other people with this. And so I trained with her to coach people in her program, in one of her signature programs. And so that's how I got into the coaching industry. And I just assumed, that that's how things were. But as I got to know more coaches, I started working with other coaches, I started coaching other people, you realize, oh no, actually that's not the case.
No, no, it's not the norm.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
I think I think we're at a time where you see where people get more informed. So I feel like it's growing up, right? It's
Right.
maturing. Because
Mm.
in the beginning it was all about the external performance. That was the focus.
Yeah.
Um, that's what people want, right? Because it feels like a quick fix.
Yeah.
But actually, when people focus on that, they stay in perpetual healing mode and
Mm.
their nervous system is still going to be activated. So you're not going to
Yes.
be able to hold any success in your body when you
Yeah.
when you don't take that holistic approach.
Yeah, okay, so tell me more about this idea of staying in the healing mode and what's wrong with that, because for a lot of people, they might, when they hear about, oh, healing, it's like amazing thing, people want healing.
Yeah. And I think that's often like the next step, or, maybe where people start is with
Yeah,
identity, and especially people that have had like traumatic childhood experiences or simply painful, stressful childhood
yeah,
experiences. They focus on the healing. And what I seen, and because I work with a lot of people who've done it all, right? They've been to the ashram in India even,
Mm.
paid high ticket prices with, people who've worked with Tony Robbins or other big names, and they're still stuck. And so like that really intrigued me. I've done timeline therapy, hypnotherapy, EMDR, EFT, breath work. Like I've kind of explored all of that. And what I've noticed is that when it comes to healing, healing for a lot of people is an escape. Because as long as they stay in healing mode, they don't have to fully show themselves and step into their power, step into their
Yeah.
light, and so it is like a place where you can stay safe. It's
Mm.
frustrating, but subconsciously we use that to keep safe. And then on the other hand, what often happens when we focus on healing, we focus on the past, and we
Mm.
gather, as we go back, we actually gather more and more story for why we believe what we believe. And especially if that core belief isn't unlocked yet, uncovered yet, which for a lot
Mm.
of people it isn't, because a lot of people think that it's I'm not good enough, or
Mm.
I'm going to be rejected. Those are not the core beliefs. And that's what keeps people in healing mode, because they never transcend that higher level.
Mm.
Plus, um, there's like something that happens in the body that keeps us in what I call a doom loop, in healing mode. And that is hardly ever, I've not seen that addressed anywhere in like all the years that I've been in the coaching industry.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I can relate to what you're saying. I had that tendency of, well, you know, in the context of me dealing with my trauma, I developed a lot of power and control issues.
Mm,
And there's this like, um, I still have a bit of a perfectionist streak come out sometimes, but in the context of the healing work, um, like I was like, okay, first of all, I was obsessed with, I got obsessed with, in a good way mostly, I think, with trying to help myself get better because I was like very depressed and I'd hit this rock bottom. And, like thankfully, I didn't just kill myself. I mean, I'm not being um, exaggerating or trying
yeah,
to, I actually got passively suicidal. Um, but, it was just by the grace of God that, like, literally that I didn't, take that path of trying to end my life in an active way, but rather um, you know, it was like, okay, you know what, I have to get help.
yeah,
And I forced myself at that point to actually reach out for help because I was like, cannot help myself. I've tried everything that I could to help myself, wasn't working, wasn't enough. So I forced myself to reach out for help, and thank God I started making some progress. And when I started making progress, that sort of like got me addicted to like, okay, I have to learn more, I have to learn more, I have to get better, I can get better, I will get better. And like you said, at some point, I did sort of um, like fall in love with being in healing mode to so much that, like I had already, started having visions and dreams for my future and what I could do, what I wanted to do, what my heart was guiding me towards. But I kept taking that action off
right.
because I was like, no, I need to learn more. I need to get even better, I don't know enough yet. I'm not healed enough yet, etc. So I relate to it.
Yeah. And it becomes this like this cycle because we want
Yeah,
to get, it's not like, this is
yeah,
not like a deliberate process, right? It's very subconscious, but it's something that I've kind of come to understand or realize is that, and I actually love what you said by that, by the grace of God, right? Because one of the like in my journey, I did the exact same thing, and it was always like almost like forcing healing and holding on to control, but still playing it small and staying
yeah.
safe. And I was, back in 2017, 18, I had developed my own coach training system,
Mm,
uh, very transformational. And yet I still could see that like there was this invisible ceiling for people and also for myself.
yeah.
And what I noticed is that like what we would focus on most is what I've been trained in is the fear of not being good enough and the fear of
Mm,
rejection or abandonment. Those two
yeah.
were the main things. And then I read this article from a friend of mine, and she mentioned Greg Braden's 3 universal fears that he mentions in the Divine Matrix.
Mm,
And so he mentioned those first two, and I was like, okay, that's what I'm seeing from like my expertise. Those are the patterns
yeah.
that we're detecting.
Yeah.
The third universal fear kind of like was a gut punch because it was completely invisible to me, which is the
Mm.
fear of trust.
The fear of trust.
The fear of trust,
Fear of trust.
which
Oh, interesting. Okay, okay. Tell me more.
so that translates to the fear of letting go of control, right? So
Mm,
if I let go of
mm,
control and I trust what is out of my control, that
mm,
activates my nervous system. And when I
mm,
read that, it was like uh, the world opening up and the world crumbling down at the same moment. Because everything that I had known up until then was like, oh, wait a minute, this is like there's something here that why it hasn't worked.
mm.
And so I started researching that. So over the last like 7 years, 5, 7 years, um, I've been like really exploring that first on an intellectual level, and
Yeah.
then, applying it to myself. How does letting go work? And I've
Mm,
come to realize that our focus in coaching therapy is often on the nervous system, right? What's wrong with the nervous system? It has to be regulated.
mm,
Actually, there's nothing wrong with the nervous system. It's
mm.
doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Issue is something that happens right before that, and that's related to that fear of trust. And it's a sensation in the body. When the body registers something is out of my control, it's a moment of relaxation. But because that moment of relaxation of like, oh, this is out of my hands, is so distorted and is linked to a core belief and a core pain that keeps us stuck, that gets us in our that gets us in our like activated nervous system. Most people don't even feel that sensation in their
Mm,
body unless it's like a panicked sensation of this is out of my hands. And it goes so quick in the body that all we register is I feel anxious, I feel
mm,
numb, I feel confused, overwhelmed. Those are all escape mechanisms, and they're not the
mm,
problem. The problem is when the body registers something is out of my hands, and that happens in so many different situations, right? Other
Yeah.
people's opinions, if I have a desire or a want, um, if I don't know something, if I don't have clarity on something, there's
Yeah.
something that's out of my hands. And the body registers it. And because the body, the subconscious mind is like, hey, wait a minute, this is dangerous because this means the universe is against me. God hates me. Um, I'm all alone.
Mm.
Or it's related to certain memories.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
We contract around it. And so it's that fear of
Yeah.
trust that keeps us in healing mode and that actually stops us from feeling free on the inside, even if we check all the boxes of success on
Mm.
the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Ah. I mean, obviously, all the three fears, the fear of trust, the fear of abandonment, the fear of not being good enough, like in my mind, they're very much connected to each other.
Yeah.
And, he, like if you, and like for me, I, I definitely had a fear of trust as you describe it. Like I mentioned, I had developed very strong power and control issues. I was so scared of um, feeling out of control, let alone be actually being out of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but it's like a losing battle that you fight because it's like the reality is that there is actually next to nothing that is within our control. Like even when you think from a very empowered perspective and you think about, what you can actually control, even then, there's very little that is within your control. And so, like for me, um, I became, like in my behavior, the way that I try to cope, especially like when I was younger, it comes out in little obsessive behaviors like, I want everything in my room to be just so. And if anyone moves it, anything, if anyone even touches my stuff, I was like, having a big explosion. I remember having meltdowns because one time my sister threw away a deodorant stick, and she was like, "Oh, I thought it was used up." I was like, "How dare you throw away my deodorant stick?" This complete overreaction to even little things like that. I mean, now I can see that there were overreactions, but in that moment, it felt to me like such a huge violation of, you know, um, my space and my rights and this and that because I just couldn't my ability to tolerate feeling out of control was so low, so low. And so like for me, like a lot of that, um, I mean, definitely connected to that was that I felt alone. A lot of that was connected to not feeling good enough, having a lot of shame and like guilt and just the trauma associated with being a survivor of child sexual abuse. So it just got really complex in terms of even trying to figure out what was needed. And you're actually right in that it's only been like it's amazing how there's such little focus on this issue of letting go because it's only been, I would say, in the last 4 or 5 years that I have met teachers and mentors who have really got me focused on it. So now
Yeah,
I'm thinking about letting go all the time,
right.
but it's only been like relatively recently in my journey that
Mm-hmm.
I've come across it. And um, now when I think about and talk about letting go, in some ways, I'm still like figuring out how to incorporate what I'm learning into my coaching because I'm learning about it in a context of deep spiritual practices, you
Yeah.
know? And so I'm like, um, still like, because most of my coaching is still like grounded in positive psychology and, those fields where, these more deep spiritual practices that I'm now learning and practicing for myself. I'm not always sure how to share them with my clients.
Right.
I'm working on it, but there's a bit of a
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, like I learned in coaching, you don't put, it's like releasing of all your own beliefs,
mm,
everything. And so you don't really place anything on your client. And so when I initially started working, because I do see this as like such a deep spiritual practice, but at the same time, because even in like, like in spirituality or in religion, they talk about surrendering, and in
yeah.
law of attraction, they talk about
Mm,
surrendering. But very often it's much more like a cognitive approach,
mm-hmm.
right? And then so how do
Yeah,
you, that's what I think is the beauty of bringing it all together and making it
yeah,
practical. Like what happens in the body that makes you not trust?
yeah,
And funnily enough, like I started, my clients, I'm non-denominational. So I work with people who don't have no concept of God. I mean, everyone has a concept of
yeah,
God one way or another, but people like who consider themselves atheist, to Christians, to Muslims, I've worked with like all of them, like, people who like are Jewish. And what I find absolutely fascinating is that, and I had to find a language for that too, right? To not inject my own thoughts or feelings about it, but that every time that I help someone to back to
mm,
their essence, back to innocence, um, and then feel into what they are connected with. And for some people,
mm,
that's God. For some people, it's God and they resist it. So then we have to do some work there. For other people, it is the universe, life force, nature, doesn't matter, right?
yeah,
Every time I ask them, what does that connection feel like?
mm,
And they all like they say it's very grounded in
mm-hmm.
unconditional love,
Yeah,
always. And so
yeah,
that's how I started
yeah,
to, I don't have to put the words to
yeah,
it. My clients will find it.
mm-hmm.
But the key thing there is that for a lot of people, spirituality is separate,
Mm,
right? Even if, so the like couple of weeks ago, I worked with a client, did a coaching demo in front of my group, and she said, yeah, but I've done all the meditation and it's very easy for me to get into that place of nothingness, oneness, but then I have to go back into my body and it's really hard. And
yeah,
at that point, it's like this separate
yeah,
thing other than, oh, like, hey, wait a minute, I need to bring this into my body And I need to connect it with that sensation of something is out of my hands. Because in the body, that is such a trigger.
Yeah.
Kind of desensitize that trigger and build
Yeah.
a whole new relationship with it. So I call that
Yeah.
going from your loop of your doom loop to your loop of faith.
Yeah.
And really embody that.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, ah, no, you're so right. And this is the, my gosh, there's just so much in what you have just said. Um, but for those of us who have some kind of religious or faith tradition that we have grown out with, so you have a concept of God and like, I'll talk about Muslims and Islam for a moment because, that's my tradition. And it's so ironic. It's so ironic for me now because the very word Islam, one of the core meanings of it, I say one of the core meanings, because actually it's an Arabic word, and Arabic is a interesting language, like Hebrew, where every word is made out of certain roots.
Yeah.
And, the roots have multiple connotations. And so any word that you generate out of any root can have multiple meanings.
Yeah.
And, you narrow, like, so then how do you understand what a word means when you speak it in any particular context? Well, you have to figure it out based on the context in which
Okay.
you're using the word, right? And so the word Islam has multiple meanings. And actually, even in the way that Muslims use and understand the word Islam, it has multiple meanings. One of the core meanings is surrender or submission, depending on, how you choose to look at it. Surrender or submission. And so it's a key value, a key principle, a key idea within Islam to, like practice surrender, practice submission, practice. I could say like on the another word for it is letting go, right?
Right.
So it's actually, so even with this reality being the case, and me growing up as a practicing Muslim in a family of practicing Muslims, I think the problem that I have identified is that, we just never went deep enough. Not that Islam doesn't teach us to go deep enough, but that
Yeah.
we as practitioners and learners never went deep enough in our learning and practice. So when we thought about surrender, about letting go, about submitting, we kept it at a surface level,
Mhm.
So for example, now the teachers I'm working with, they say, you have to even let go of your desires, you have to let go of every want, you have to let go of just everything off you, and like like and like there's that, like I didn't get it. I didn't get how important and critical that was. Um, and there was a part of me, like when I first learning about it, it was like, no, what? Th- What are you talking about? Like, for example, like just to say, like one day my teacher was like, yeah, even all of your relationships, like you have to let go, you have to submit, you have to surrender your relationships. But it was like, but my relationships are my life.
Right.
What are you talking about? That it's like, um, but it's like, yeah, no, you have to let go. Not like you're letting go, like you don't care about them anymore, or you're disconnecting yourself, but it's the letting go of the control,
Yes.
the need for control that you're letting go, and you're stepping into the trust aspect
Yeah.
of like, no, it's like I'm letting go of the control. Everything is still there. We're still connected. It's like you, even if you try to break the connection, you can't break the connection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think we often hold on so much to how
Yeah,
what it look like or how things should come about.
yeah,
And like so when I first started exploring this, I read this book by Michael Singer, his book The Surrender Experiment.
yeah,
And right in the beginning, he describes like everything in this universe unfolds as it should perfectly
mm,
without our interference. And so then who are we to think that we have to kind of control that unfolding, right? And so like just like an apple tree unfolds and creates and grows apples, he wanted to do this experiment of like,
yeah,
okay, what if I let go of all control and resistance
yeah,
and just let my life unfold? And the first time I read that, I was like, because like in law of attraction, there
yeah,
is a lot of control of like I'm gonna visualize what I want and I get
yeah,
fulfilled and stuff like that. And so I was like, I'm gonna go with that option because no way I'm ever gonna do that. And now, like, I think when you really do go deep
yeah,
enough, find that like oneness, that it is like, oh, wait a minute, everything is okay.
yeah,
And there is nothing to want and I do believe also that, when you are in that place and like a deeper desire pops up, that you can set
mhm,
that desire free,
mm,
right? That you can just let it, like, I don't know, bloom or whatever, because
mhm,
it's coming from that place, the unknown. But we don't have to figure out the how. We don't have to
mm,
focus on when, with whom, where, and want to control all of that. But it's
yeah. No, you're so right. You just reminded me of a conversation that I was having with one of my people, um, where I was talking about, no, we need to let it go, let it all go. And so this person that I was talking to, she's actually also sort of in the coaching space, and there's a lot of has both been through a lot of coaching and sort of like dabbling into now coaching herself. And she does really great work, actually. Uh, and I've actually even worked with her on some things where she's really helped me. She's a really amazing relationship expert.
yeah,
And in any case, but when we started talking about letting it all go, like one of her concerns that came up, she was like, well, but like I can't let go of like envisioning what I need, what I want, because otherwise, how am I supposed to stay in action? Like, what's going to motivate me? Because it's like when she was talking about basically this practice or this experience of going into these coaching spaces where where your mentor, your coach is like, okay, now we're going to make envision our dream of how we're going to be and how we're going to live. We're 5 years from now, how it's going to be. And then, we're going to create this plan for how we're going to make it happen, like that process. And so like so first you go through the process of envisioning and stuff, and then you create your plan, and then what happens is that you get into control mode, right? I mean, thinking like, because now you have a plan and you have to follow, you better make it happen. And if it's not happening, you're like, oh no, what am I doing wrong? I'm not doing enough. And then, oh my gosh, the law of attraction, what's wrong? Why is it not working? So you get into this whole cycle. But at the same time, the thought of, I'm like, oh, let it all go, let it all go. But it's like, no, but then what keeps me in action? What motivates me? Then I'm aimless. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. And like my experience has been that surrender actually puts you in inspired action. And when you take action from there, like it has so much more, I guess, magnetism to it. Like I don't have another way of describing that, but anytime I create from that place, the reactions and the like whatever shows up as a result of that
Yeah.
is stuff that I couldn't even have imagined. And then if I don't, like then it becomes like a drudge. But I also think that for a lot of people, doing is like an escape, right? Because like rest, relaxation, that's like not done. So this whole waiting for inspired action and just enjoying yourself
Mm,
in the meantime
mm.
is like counterintuitive.
Yeah, and the thing is though that like to say that or wait even for inspired action. I think even that thought is a little bit misleading ourselves, because when you are following this path of letting it go and taking inspired action, um, even if you don't realize what you're doing is inspired action, it's inspired action. Like you were saying, like to have trust that everything is unfolding
Yeah.
in the perfect way. Anyway, so it's like, I don't know. It's like I may not realize how it's unfolding in the perfect way for me right now and what it's leading me to. But it comes back to that trust. Do I have trust that it is in fact happening? And so like for me, um, you know, like this was like many years back, like maybe 10 years ago or something. I went to one of these conferences. It was meant to be a transformational seminar. And our teacher mentor, he actually took us through a beautiful process where we connected with our heart and, our and did a prayer and like, heart, please show us, the vision for our that we should strive for, live into, etc., this and that. And so it wasn't like like whatever the vision was, whatever the dream was that I saw at that time, it wasn't anything that my mind came out with.
Right.
And I realized that because it was beyond any of my wildest imagination, and it was beyond anything that I would have dared to honestly dream. Because
Right.
when I had, afterwards, when I thought about putting a logical plan together to make that dream happen, I couldn't even. I was like, I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I don't know enough. And it was all true, by the way. Like logically, practically, um, I didn't know enough. I didn't have enough, um, and so forth. But it comes back to, so actually that threw me into a downward spiral of contraction.
Yeah.
But interestingly, like it keeps coming back, like that vision, that dream, it refuses to go away. Every time I connect with my heart, if anything, it grows even grander.
Right. 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 And
And
what?
yeah.
Like that's the thing too, right? Is that our focus often is like with, if we bring it back to healing mode, why we stay
Yeah.
there is because when we have that big dream,
Yeah.
even sometimes the imagination of it can be too much to hold,
Yeah.
but to actually embody and experience that level of abundance and, freedom and success,
Yeah.
like to really step into that, that requires, I think, an even bigger trust than like when we fear that we're not gonna get what we want, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so like for me, the practice, the beautiful thing is that now that, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, as I mentioned, I've been, working with teachers and mentors on this practice of letting go. What I'm realizing and noticing is that as I've been getting better and better at letting it all go, I'm by no means perfect at it, not even close.
Right. No,
But the
yeah.
better I get at it, like things are happening that, like it's still not always clear where things are heading, but sometimes I get these glimmers of, oh, this just happened and I just experienced this and maybe this is a tiny piece of that puzzle to make that big dream come to realization, you know? And so uh, and I'm just now working on not getting obsessed with figuring it out and trying to control it and just being like, no, you know what? Letting it go, letting it go, letting it unfold. So, and it's been such a game changer in terms of my mental health, in terms of my physical health, in terms of my spiritual health. It's just like
It is,
so much
right?
better.
Inner freedom. Yeah. Like it's yeah, I don't think we all realize when we're in it how much contraction we hold on to and the damage that it does to our bodies.
Mhm.
And I like something that I
Yeah.
see a lot of people, they can stay in that control through their 20s and their 30s, and then they go into the 40s and like they don't have like the
Mm.
excess energy anymore to
Mm.
keep that going.
Yeah.
And that's when you see like, oh my gosh, I've tried it all. Something
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's but it's the letting go. And for me, I can only remember being in contraction, from
Mm.
very early age. So for me, I remember like I did one time I did a training and someone like when we had to do like presentations and it was like
Mm.
a coach, like a trainer's training, and we had to kind of tell each other how you have to present, right? And so this one guy said to me, like, I want you to present as if you're like a puppet on a string,
Mm.
right? So, hey, like I'm handing over control to the person controlling me, the puppet. And it stuck with me because I had to really relax my body rather than
Mm.
like being, like this tight column.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, tension. And it was yeah, I've had these like sprinkles. I think they were
Mhm.
like little signals of, hey, lady, relax.
Yeah, and I think like for me, one of the tricky things that I had to realize and figure out in terms of just letting go thing, in order to actually relax about the idea of letting go enough to be like, okay, I'm going to give it a try, is like I had to think about it from a spiritual perspective. Like I could not even now, like, if you tell me let go of control in the context of any of my human relations, I'm going to say no. I mean, to a certain extent, yes, but uh, in a complete way, absolutely no. There's no way I'm giving up my right to think for myself, giving up my right to decide, um, you know, to give up my right to be like, you know, like, if there's a moral ethical issue, my right
Yeah.
to, follow my own sense of what's right and what's wrong. There's no way I'm willing to give up that right to any other human being. Right? There's no way
Right.
I'm doing that. So the only context in which I'm willing to let it all go is in my relationship with my maker, my creator, the divine. Because, you know, that is the only relationship that, I can feel, even theoretically, that justifies such a complete letting go or makes sense to engage in such complete letting go. Because again, like for me, my conception of my creator, my God, is that my God is all merciful, all compassionate, he's all knowing, all wise, right? And so my God is the only being in the context of whom it even makes sense for me to let it all go. No other human being is all wise or all knowing or all compassionate, all merciful,
No,
etc. So
no. And I think also like we can't control other people, right?
Yeah.
I think that that's the whole point of that fear of trust. The focus often is on I can't trust other people,
mhm,
or I can't trust myself, or I can't trust my body. But
yeah,
at like that higher level, I call it the unknown because I work with so many different, you know, faiths, and I want to honor whatever someone has in their heart.
yeah,
So I call that the unknown. It's like this creative force that has that connects us all. That's what we need to trust.
mm,
And when that, and I think there's so many, for me, even just being born is what kind of initiates a sense of separation,
mm,
that oneness, right? We forget that oneness. And then there is so much control from people around us, and we
yeah,
look to humans for unconditional love, which is
yeah,
near impossible. Ideally, that's what we, provide our children with, and we can feel that in our heart, but that doesn't mean that our children experience it in that way, especially when there is so much control. I was thinking about this yesterday because I do like free schooling with my son, and
mm,
that means that he gets to choose what he learns, and we're kind of radical in that he doesn't have he's sovereign, right? He gets to decide his bedtime, what he wants to eat. We have conversations about it. But I realized how control still sneaks in. Like if
mm,
he has a conflict with a friend, I'm uncomfortable with it, and I want to control that it gets back to harmony.
yeah,
Right? So I will like start asking him questions, but I never even asked him permission. Are you okay? Do you want my help? How do you want my help? So
mm,
in a way that, because so much of our power is taken away,
yeah,
we kind of draw really big conclusions from that. Like I feel
mm,
powerless. This doesn't, and this feels painful, so I
yeah,
cannot trust.
mm. Yeah,
So
it's interesting to think about parent-child relationship and issues of control. Because like with kids, I've actually tried to explore this with some other people. I've never been able to go deep enough because so maybe that's something you and I can get into. And I don't know if you'll have time to do that today. We might have to just bring you back.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. But yeah, because like, but just to at least share the thought I'm having right now is,
Yeah.
like the thing that I'm not a parent. First of all, I should say that. Uh, but I am a child, and I have been, like really reflecting on the parent-child relationship in the last year or two, especially, not only because I want to improve my relationship with my parents, but also because, I have like so many little ones in my life in terms of nieces and nephews and just other kids in my life. And on the one hand, you're like, okay, they don't know. I mean, especially the younger they are, like the little babies and all. Like you literally have to do everything for them. They're like completely depending on you. And then even as they're growing up, like you're like questioning how much capacity does my child have to understand this or that in terms of if I want to um, help them process this or understand that. Like if they are wanting something that I think is bad for them, like it just, like I was realizing I had some theories of how I would deal with a situation, but in the reality of like when I was actually with my niece or nephew and we were dealing with a concrete situation
Yeah.
of, like some kind of tantrum or disagreement on what was good for them to do in that moment. All the theories that I had in my mind kind of, I couldn't always follow through or they went down the drain.
Yeah.
And so, there's that, and I'm like, oh gosh, okay, you go to your parents. I haven't got this
That's
figured
one
out
thing you
yet.
can still give them back. But yeah, I am finding that the more I try to control, even like if I'm not aware of it, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, you can't have conflict or you can't, like you can't, there's like still so many rules that I hold. And then like, my kid said, like, why do we always have to talk about everything, you know? And I did not ask for his permission or like to give my advice.
Uh-huh.
And as adults, like we don't always like uninvited
Yeah.
advice either. So but it's, like it's just like a really interesting journey because there's something that you said earlier about like giving up, your that trust is related to your maker, your creator, and you're not and that you don't want to necessarily hand over control to other people, right? Over your sovereignty. And
Yeah.
I think sovereignty and trust in the unknown, in the creator, the maker, go hand in hand. They're
Yeah.
mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, that's like I think a journey, but what I'm seeing with my clients is that when they embody that trust, right? Not just cognitively understand, but deeply feel into that oneness and the trust,
Mm.
then all of a sudden, other people's opinions no longer matter
Mm.
because there's like this really deep intuition. And I think it's because we are one, right, with our creator, with our maker.
Mm.
But that's what I find fascinating. And the same thing with not being good enough. When they are in that space and I ask them, how do you now feel about yourself? I actually really like myself. I even love myself here. And
Yeah.
sometimes people have been trying to fix that for decades. And in one conversation, when they feel that oneness, doesn't mean
Mhm.
that they are walking out of that session always feeling that oneness. But when they feel that, all of a sudden, all those other things just drop away.
Yeah, it's a little bit uh, funny where now that, more and more I'm grounded. I'm working on being even more grounded in this, feelings of connection. And so, being in joy and gratitude, I've developed such good self-esteem. And, like sometimes now I forget that not everyone is where I'm at in terms of like just the other day, I was having a conversation. I'm like part of this committee of people. I won't get into detail about what it's about, but someone was like, "Oh, could you be experiencing this problem with that person because they don't like you because, they're being racist against you or something like that?" And my first thought, I didn't say it out loud, but my first thought was, "So why would they not like me? I'm so lovable."
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Oh yeah. And then I had to remind myself, no, no, there are many perspectives from which, people could have a problem with
Yeah.
me.
Yes. You know, maybe you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is okay. And I don't mind. I don't mind. I'm okay with that. I still love myself so much. Um, oh gosh, Femka, I want to keep talking to you and I'm keeping an eye on the clock and I see that we need to wrap up for today. Do you have any last thoughts for us to share right now?
No, I mean, I could also go for hours. Like, I love chatting with you, and I have to say, I'm so happy that you reached out again because I know that you reached out a couple of years ago, and it wasn't the right time at that time. But I'm so glad that you reached out again and that we got to connect.
Yes, everything unfolding in the perfect way all the time, right? Yay, thank you so much, Famka. So I look forward to continuing our chat with you another time. And in the meantime, I just want to remind all of you listening to please make sure you check the show notes because we will be dropping Famka's links in there so you can connect with her and get the help and support you need whenever you feel ready for it. So until we connect next time, I wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.